Good afternoon, my name is Terry Cutts and we're in the Stonewall Gallery of Folk Art, and today I'm going to be giving a lesson on a Huichol yarn painting. In this lesson you're going to see how you can really take the kids deep by asking them to become one of the characters in the painting. And when they do that, they will have to look very carefully at all the details and eventually try to put all of that together and figure out what's happening. Now this piece has lots of symbols in it, so at the end I do share with the students what the symbols mean and how symbols are used to create bonds between cultures and tell stories in a way that the cultures can understand. So you can either use it to go as a deep dive, or you can use the information that's presented to talk about the symbols on a shorter tour. I hope you find this helpful. Thanks. Good afternoon and welcome to the Tucson Museum of Art. My name is Mrs. Cutts and I'm going to be your docent today. And a docent is somebody that tries to help you read the story of the artist and understand what he's trying to tell you. And today we're standing in the Stonewall Gallery, and that is a folk art gallery. And it's folk art of Latin America. And I'm going to show you a map. This is a map of Latin America. And as you can see, Latin America has lots of countries, all the countries in South America, Central America, and Mexico. And because there's so many countries, there's tons of folk art. But before we talk about the folk art that we're going to look at today, I'd like you to talk together and come up with a definition of what you think folk art is. So go ahead and talk. Okay, what I heard you saying is that Pat thought that it's stuff that's made out of clay, and Jaylyn says it's stuff that folks make. And what did you think, Kate?
I said the art and from objects that are around the village or the city or the town, wherever you live.
Those are all exactly one definition of folk art. What folk art is art made by an artist that didn't go away to school, usually. Some of them did, to learn their trade. They learned it from somebody else, like a friend or a family member, and the craftsmanship was passed down to them for generations and generations. And often folk art is meant to tell us a story to help us understand the culture better, and this one in particular does that. And they often use symbols that the people of that culture can understand, but that we might not understand. Okay? So this is a piece of art that has to do with a ceremony. How many of you have been involved in a ceremony before? What ceremony were you involved in?
I was involved in a tea ceremony.
Oh, and what kind of symbols were involved in that?
Well, of course it was smells. There were smells,
Mm-hmm.
and then we drank the tea, and then we talked about the conversation with people, you know, bringing the community together.
Great. Was this in Japan?
No, it was in China.
Oh, wow. Anybody else involved in a ceremony?
Well,
Yes?
I've been to a graduation ceremony.
Oh, and are there any symbols associated with graduation ceremonies?
Well, everybody wore caps and gowns,
So special clothing.
and
Mhm.
they got a diploma.
Ooh, so special awards.
And there was music. There was like some really, like some orchestra music that played.
Very good. Jaylyn, how about you?
I went to a wedding ceremony,
Oh,
and it was in the winter and dark, like in candlelit ceremony.
oh.
It was very pretty.
Yes, so we're hearing that there's lots of ceremonial symbols attached to each other, and when they're used, you feel kind of closer to that group and part of that group that you're with, right? So we're going to be using symbols today to discuss this yarn painting. But before we get started, we belong to different subcultures where you went to a graduation, you went to a tea ceremony, and you went to a wedding, but we also belong to a bigger culture, the United States. And in the United States, we have certain symbols that we use to represent things that people maybe from this culture might not know, and they may be feeling a little bit confused, just like we might be feeling confused right now. So before we start, I'm going to hand out some symbol cards, and I want you guys to look at them. And after you've had a chance to look at them and talk about them, I want you to choose one to share. So Pat, what do you have there?
I picked the eagle.
And what do you think that represents?
Well, a lot of times it represents our country.
Mhm.
It's the national bird, I guess. And sometimes I see it on a coat of arms, and it means strength and character.
Oh, excellent. So you know that from being part of the United States and also from seeing it on coats of arms. So it's a very recognizable symbol to you. How about you?
I have the heart.
Okay. And what does that mean to you when you
Well,
see it?
It's coming together and it's supporting one another. And
Okay.
caring about one another.
Okay. In some other country, if they saw that, they might not have any idea what that was because, for instance, the Weechel might look at that and think, what is that?
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
but we know it right away because we see it in kind of our daily existence. How about you?
I have four-leaf clover, which is, I think, originated in Ireland, maybe, and St. Patrick's Day, and it means good luck. And if you catch a leprechaun, you can get gold.
Right, so we've seen that lots of symbols in our culture, the larger United States, are really easily recognizable to us, but they might not be so much to another culture. And when we look at this, we might feel a little bit confused about what some of those things in there mean. So in order to try to figure out what's going on in here, and I will tell you that this is representing a ceremony in the Weechel culture, we're going to become one of those characters that's in there. So before we do that, I want you to just kind of take a look at it, and in a minute I'm going to ask you to tell me what you've noticed. Is anybody ready to share something that they noticed?
We noticed they were smoking.
Oh, and in our culture, we don't associate smoking with something very good. So it's interesting that that would be in a ceremony, right? Anything else?
They seem to be sitting around maybe a fire pit.
Okay, so this seems like they're a fire and they're sitting around it smoking something. Okay.
And there's the corn stalk, which may mean abundance or a lot or a harvest.
Okay. Okay, so there's a corn stalk and it's floating in the air.
Yeah.
So that's kind of an interesting place for it to be.
And there's turtles, and they're swimming in all different, or they're moving. It looks like they're pointed in all different
They're all
directions.
different directions, lots and lots of turtles. So which one of these is most interesting to you? Which either figure or thing in this yarn painting? Yeah, which one do you think is most interesting?
Well, I'm going back to the corn stalk.
You think the corn
Because,
stalk?
You know, it has to do with feeding people.
Okay. So do you think maybe this culture is a farming culture?
Could be.
Okay.
And actually, turtles could be feeding people too.
Okay.
And I wonder what the snake is about.
You're wondering.
He's at the top.
Oh, so it's at the top. Maybe he's most important? I don't know. What do you
I
think?
see that green thing too. I can't decide if it's a jellyfish or a dog.
I'll tell you a little bit more about that later.
It stands out. There's nothing else that's really that color. Well, a little bit of people.
It's interesting you're picking up on the colors because for this culture, color has a lot of importance, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. Okay, so some of you were interested in the snake, and one of you was interested in the corn stalk. So talk between yourselves and decide which one of those that you want to become in order to try to figure out. You're going to work in a threesome and try to figure out what's going on here.
Let's go.
Okay, so I'm hearing Pat's interested in turtles, so they want to try something that's different too. Okay, so I'm going to hand you a sheet, and in the center it says turtle, and around the edge are the different senses that we have. And you're going to think about one of the turtles because you have to pick one to do this activity. And you're going to say, I think the turtle, it can see these things. And we might imagine that the turtle might be hearing certain things or smelling certain things. So all the senses will help you figure out what this turtle can perceive. And that will cause you to look very carefully at all the details. And then maybe we can figure out what's going on. Okay, so hear, smell, taste, feel, and see. And then we'll come back together and talk about it. And we'll try to decide what we think is happening. One of you is going to be the scribe. They're going to write down everything. One of you is going to be the talker when we're done, and the other one's going to be the clarifier, and that means that if we need any more information, you're going to help us figure out what your group is thinking. Okay, so decide among yourself who's going to be what, and I'll give you a couple minutes to work on that. So, group one, what did you see in this picture, and what character were you?
We chose the turtle, turtle. We chose the turtle on the left,
Right here?
the what we think might be a flag,
Okay.
a banner. And we think that that turtle is seeing the roof of the house, and maybe we didn't know if that was a flag with beans or feathers.
Okay.
I think he can see it, and the corn stalk, and he can see the other turtle because he's swimming in that direction.
This turtle up here?
Yes.
Okay.
And we think he might feel wet if the blue is water, but we think he feels cool.
Okay. Great.
And we didn't know what he might taste. We said if that was water, we wanted to know if it was fresh water or salt water.
Oh, yeah, good job using your imagination there.
And we thought maybe he could smell the corn, or maybe he could smell if they're smoking corn. We thought maybe he could smell smoke. Or
Okay.
maybe the smoke from the fire pit.
Okay.
And he could hear the wind rustling, and maybe he could hear a snake hissing, and we didn't know if those people
These people
were-
here, or these people, okay.
were talking or maybe chanting, but if they were making noises, he could hear them.
Okay, great job. So any clarification? Did you want to add anything? Good job reporting out, Jaylyn. So let's think about everything that you got. Let me take this from you. You're thinking that the frog is seeing corn and maybe feathers, maybe beans hanging on a pole. This red house in the middle, the roof of it, that he's hearing possibly the rustling of the corn and the hissing of the snake. Okay. Maybe these people are chanting or something like that. He's feeling cool because the blue color made you think it was water, or at least made you feel like it was cool. Maybe taste is kind of a tricky one. Maybe he's tasting salt. He might have a better idea what these guys were tasting and not the turtle. And he could smell smoke from this and from the fire, perhaps. Okay, so you did a great job noticing all the little details and clues in this yarn painting. And so I would like you to think now, based on all of that taken together, what do you think that this ceremony is about? What do you think the ceremony is about?
I think it has to do with
I do too. I do too, in abundance. Abundance or lack of abundance, or praying for abundance, or,
Yeah, I don't think it's planting because the corn stalk's slowly developing.
yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
So I heard Jaylyn say she thinks it has something to do with the harvest, and Kate agreed. And why did you think that again, Jaylyn? Something to do with the harvest?
Because the corn looks like it's, what do you call that? Tousled out?
Yeah, it's
or-
tousled out.
Okay, so because of that, you can tell that it's been growing for a while. It's
Yeah,
not
it's
new.
not new.
Okay.
And it may be a thankful for a good harvest. It could be that, or praying for a good harvest.
Okay.
You know.
So
I think it might be the rain.
you're thinking rain.
All those things in there would need water to survive.
Yeah, that's true too. That's a good idea.
Okay, so Pat says maybe they're praying for rain because every single thing in this yarn painting needs water to survive, and so maybe they need rain. Well, I'm going to tell you what it's about, and you guys were right on target with all your different ideas because you looked so carefully. Okay, so this is called a yarn painting, and it's made by a group of people called the Huichol, and the Huichol people are descended from the Aztec. Do any of you know anything about the Aztec?
They were pretty violent.
They were pretty
I
violent.
think didn't they get conquered too by some Spanish?
Yes.
Right.
They did.
So that's exactly right. They got conquered by the Spanish in about the 1600s. And when the Spanish were conquering different people in Latin America, they were making them change their belief systems. And one of those belief systems was religion. But the Huichol avoided this because they lived way up here in a very rugged part of Mexico. Sorry, I made a move. And in that part of Mexico, there weren't any minerals that the Spanish were interested in. It was too hard to get there, so the Spanish left them alone. And the Huichol continued with their beliefs, which included 120 gods, and the belief that everything has a spirit, okay, and they have to be very respectful. Now, this is a ceremony where they're asking for rain. And things that we can see in here that show that it's a ceremony for rain is the snake, which seems odd, the turtles, and the color blue. Also, we know that it's a ceremony for rain because this house in the middle is considered the house of, well, the painting is called House of God, and they're all around it, and these important ceremonial items are also around it. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about what those symbols mean more specifically. So when we think of snakes, we think of reptiles slithering through the ground and not an evil. Well, they associate it with the rain goddess. And the rain goddess for the Huichol people is very important. In fact, the Huichol believe that the rain that falls from the sky is actually millions of little snakes. And they believe, and they love that idea because, as you all realized, they are farmers and their corn harvest is very important to them. And snakes would go into the fields and eat the rodents that would try to kill the corn. So that's why they thought. So in addition to the water, they believed it was little snakes. The turtles that you see here, they are the ones in charge of replenishing the fresh water and making it pure for you. And the blue is associated with rain. So if there's a rain ceremony, you would always have those three symbols in there. There's some other symbols that you have in every single really important ceremonial piece. And that is the feathers. These were actually feathers. And they believe that the feathers carry their words up to God, to whatever God they're praying to. Their most important symbol is fire, and it can be represented by a fire or also anywhere you see red. And fire is also their grandfather. They believe they are directly descended from fire. So when they have ceremonies like this, they'll bring the fire special food and special things to drink. Okay, so you notice that they're smoking something. They're smoking something called peyote, and that is something that can help them go into a trance because they think they have to kind of be in a trance to talk to their gods. Have you ever heard like a Gregorian chant? Okay, lots of religions have chants, and they kind of put themselves into a trance. They also chant, they smoke the peyote, and they have a special chair where they drum. And I'm going to show you a picture where they can drum out a beat. And let's listen a minute to their ceremonial chant. Here we go. Yeah, what did you notice about it?
It's like a mantra, yoga mantra.
Right, it keeps repeating the same thing over and over again. It has a very steady, can you see how that might put you into a trance? Especially maybe if you were smoking some of the peyote? Okay, so as we've seen, by looking at this and taking really time to look at it carefully, that symbols are very important to cultures. And this seemed really confusing to us at first, but after we looked at it and really thought about it, it really wasn't at all. It made perfect sense to us. So everything in here, because it's ceremonial, was placed there for a specific purpose. The colors were for a specific purpose. And we'll see that in our own art as well. So there's a lot more folk art to look at here, and I hope that you'll come back sometime and maybe bring your parents. And I want you to remember that folk art's like a window into somebody's culture, and if you take the time to really look at it, you might learn something about them. Okay, what was your favorite thing that you learned about the Huichol?
I'm fascinated that they see the snake as a good symbol, and I had would do.
Isn't that
in a
interesting?
community like that.
Right, so it has kind of a duality, yes. And it kind of goes back to the Aztecs, just as an aside, because they have a two-headed snake, which they believe is their greatest god, their highest god.
What is the green thing?
I think, and I'm guessing because I can't find anything specifically on, I think that might be a peyote bud.
Okay.
Because they believe that by smoking it brings them into harmony with the world. And so that would be a really important symbol. I first thought it was a jellyfish myself, but I'm thinking it's a peyote bud.
I like, in thinking about it, learning that it's a way that the culture shares their story and reminds the next generation
Right.
of the importance of farming and why they do what they do.
Right, exactly. And that's one of the things that folk art often does, is share a story. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Yate wakugawa masisik, yate wakugawa